Mr. Manish Sabharwal holds a master's degree in management from the Wharton School and is an alumnus of Mayo College Ajmer and Sriram College of Commerce in Delhi. He is a successful serial entrepreneur and experienced operating manager. He is a co-founder and chairman of Teamlease Services Limited, as also the co-founder of Hewitt Outsourcing Services India Limited and India Life Hewitt. Manish also serves on various state and central government committees on education, employment, employability, and has written articles which are featured in Indian Express, Financial Express, Live Mint, Business Today, Business Standard, and the Economic Times. Manish headed the subcommittee for Planning Commission on remodeling of apprenticeship training as another mode of on-the-job training as the chairman of the committee. He is an adjunct faculty at the National Civil Services Academy. He is also with the National Skills Mission, which is chaired by none other than the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Narendra Modi. He is currently a nominated member of the Central Advisory Board of Education, the highest advisory board to advise the center and the state governments in the field of education. He serves on the executive committee of the Chief Minister's Advisory Council, Planning Department of Government of Rajasthan. Manish is also an expert, is also a part of the expert committee on innovation, Niti Aayog. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and give a resounding welcome to Mr. Manish Sabharwal. Manish.
So when you get to my age, the most interesting question is what matters more in life, luck or skill, and obviously love. Unrecognized genius is almost as common as idiots in high positions, right? All of you recognize that, but it's very real for me. I've hired somebody every 5 minutes for the last 5 years, but I've only hired 5% of the kids who came to me for a job. So I'm at the sort of agony and ecstasy of India's labor market, but this is probably true all over the world. I had a telecom client shouting at me, saying, I have 200 sales positions, why haven't you filled them up? I told him your hiring standards are too high, so he called me back in a few hours and said, I need a pair of hands, I don't care if a brain comes attached, which is nice. But the agony wasn't as obvious to me till I started Teamlease. We had a job fair, 35,000 people showed up, I met 800 of them. I can guarantee they would have had a job if they were born in Delhi, Bombay, or Bangalore, but they were born in Dausa, Barmer, or rural Rajasthan. And this is true for all over the world. So the two most important decisions a child in India makes, or a child in the world makes, are to choose your parents wisely and to choose your PIN code wisely. You are all laughing, and you are all sitting here because all of you chose your parents wisely or your PIN code wisely. I have 95,000 kids who come to me for a job every month. I only hire 5,000. And I would submit that this is not a fatalistic view of the world. There are two views of history. There is the social science view of history and there is the literature view of history. So the social science view of history are people like Tolstoy or people like Romila Thapar who say that history is not about people, it is all about circumstances. It's one event of the other. But there's the literature view of history, which is people like Carlyle or Ramchandra Guha, who believe that the history of the world is the biography of great people. People make a difference, it's the biography of great leaders. The luck phase of your life is now over for most of you graduates. I clearly hope that you will be in the literature view of history rather than the social science view of history when you think about your life. What people do matters. And let me tell you 5 things that I know today that I wish I knew when I was sitting when you are. But obviously I know that postmortems have a certainty that prescriptions don't. And life is lived forward but understood backward. So much of what your parents tell you or what I tell you won't make sense to you today. But I think it will make sense someday. Churchill once said when he was 18 years old that he was so frustrated with how little his father knew. But at 23, he said, I was surprised how much my father had learned in 5 years. And I think all of you will face that. I faced the same experience when I was growing up. But what are the 5 things that I wish I knew when I was sitting where you are? Well, one is take more risk. The days are long, but the years are short. I just went for my 20-year reunion to school, and I will submit that the saddest days phrase of Middle Ages is, I wish I had. Because you can always change the things you did, but you can never change the things that you didn't do. And so my first company was a $10 million company, and my next company was a $400 million company, purely for the simple reason that I took more risk with the second company. And now, there's an interesting story. So one of the world's largest staffing companies, a $40 billion company, called me up on my cell phone once and said, I want to come to Bangalore and see you. I said, sure, sir, why? He says, my general counsel says you're a bunch of kids who are going to go to jail. I said, sir, I would love to meet you. So he got on his private plane and came to Bangalore and sat down in our conference room. And then he says, well, now tell me your strategy. I said, why do you keep asking me these questions? He says, well, we have been in India for 5 years and we have 500 employees. You guys have been only around for 5 years and you have 75,000 employees. What is your strategy? I said, sir, we have a very simple strategy. In fact, we have the only strategy which works. There's an old story about Akbar where he sentences this guy to death. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to chop off your head. Like I said, Jahanpana, please don't do that. I'll make your horse fly in 6 months. So that guy says, okay, go back to jail. If Akbar says, you make my horse fly, go back to jail. So he goes back to jail and his roommate asks him, how are you going to make his horse fly? He said, 6 months, man. I may die, horse may die, Akbar may die, horse may fly. Entrepreneurship is the art of staying alive long enough to get lucky, if you think about it. And when I talk about taking more risk, India was a reckless experiment when we were tried in 1947. Young, large, poor, religiously diverse, and linguistically diverse countries were not supposed to be democracies. In fact, no country gave universal franchise at one go. You first gave it to people who had land, then you gave it to people who were educated, then you gave it to people who were rich, and then you gave it to women. Remember, women in Switzerland didn't get to vote till 1971. So it's very important to recognize that the risks that were taken by India in 1947 have paid off because they were big risks. So the take more risk one is absolutely important for you. The second one is cultivate a growth mindset. I would urge all of you to read the work of Carol Dweck. She's a psychologist at Stanford who talks about the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. People who have a fixed mindset believe that capabilities are like shoe size or height. They are given. And growth mindset are people who believe that capabilities are like muscles, which can be developed with working out. I think the fundamental difference, if you think back to the social science view of history and the literature view of history, is a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And today, your education ends in one way. But this is absolutely the beginning of the rest of your education. You're going to have to figure out how to cultivate a growth mindset of getting yourself better and better and better. You can do that. There are only 3 ways to learn. You can do it through people, you can do it through experiences, or you can do it through reading. Personally, for me, reading has been a weapon of freedom for me. I can become a reasonable expert on any subject for a year, and don't believe the myth that novels are sort of for pleasure and nonfiction is boring. The most interesting management book in the world is the biography of the Duke of Marlborough by Winston Churchill. It is a book on mergers and acquisitions and strategic alliances. The most important book about setting goals is Pygmalion by George Bernard Shaw, because it's the power of expectation. That's what became My Fair Lady, by the way. The most interesting book about transparency and the power of communication is Harun and the Sea of Stories by Salman Rushdie. The land of Gup goes to war with the land of Chup because they kidnap Princess Batjeet. I would urge you to read that book. I have read a book every week for the last 15 years. I hope some of you will beat my average in the next 15. But when you think about it, the growth versus fixed mindset, or really luck versus skill, is really also about optimism versus pessimism, right? Every pessimist believes that he or she is a realist. But I will submit that optimism is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Oscar Wilde probably said it better than anybody else. We are all in the gutter together, but some of us are looking at the stars. So think about positivity, think about optimism. The third one is learning to get along with people. It's very easy to not get along with people. That's probably the default. There is a toxic myth that successful CEOs, prime ministers, popes, principals, or generals are one-man armies. Life is a team sport. Nothing big or meaningful is accomplished alone. As an entrepreneur, there are 2 kinds of companies you can create, a baby and a dwarf. A baby and a dwarf are both small, but the baby is going to grow and the dwarf is going to stay there. The difference between a baby and a dwarf is not more food. It's not more money. It's not more, it's in DNA and it's in getting along with people. In fact, in school, sometimes I think we give you a bit of a wrong message, because in school, in life, to get ahead, you can't do anything alone. But in school, we give you the message that what you have to do is work hard, take an exam, and work alone. In fact, in school, we have another word for teamwork. We call it cheating. So I would submit to you that, smart people hang out with people who are smarter and different than them. My co-founder, Ashok, he was my roommate in Sri Ram College. He went to IIM Bangalore. We did India Life, my earlier company, together. We've done Teamlease together. And he's much smarter than I am. He's an introvert. I'm an extrovert. He's good at operations. I'm good at selling. He's good at therapy sessions with cribbing employees. I make them cry. He's ugly. I'm good looking. I could go on. But I think our board member said something very interesting in my last board meeting, that if only Manish had been around, the company wouldn't have survived. And if only Ashok had been around, the company would have been 1/100th of its size. I think both of us agree with him. Ashok is this risk-averse middle-class Indian. He would have never grown the company. But I think him holding his nose with me and me holding my nose with him for 20 years is why we've got to where we are. And I would urge all of you to learn to get along with people who are different than you. It's easy to get along with people who are like you. Finally, and that leads to a second related point, is about keeping friends. It's easy to make friends when you're in school because you have so many shared experiences. But the older you get, the more you realize that keeping friends is harder than making them. And some people believe actually that you can't make new friends after you're 30 years old. I'm not sure about that, but there's probably some truth around that. So, look around you. These people who are very important to you right now, they should stay important to you as you sort of journey through the agony and ecstasy of life. Stay in touch with them, care for them, be generous with them, be forgiving of them, because when you are famous, rich, or successful, which because you went to Manipal you will be, you will need them more than you need them today. Finally, and the most important one, is be different. I think this doesn't mean don't be a prisoner of your opening balance. Just because your father was a doctor, it doesn't mean you have to be a doctor. Just because your mother was an accountant doesn't mean you have to be an accountant. Don't worry about what others are thinking or doing, because following other people's dreams usually doesn't create passion. And passion trumps intelligence. So the warmth at the center of the herd is usually comforting, but it's usually not a ticket to something great. I can't think of anybody else who said it more, and my Bengali accent is really bad. But Rabindranath Tagore's song, I would urge all of you to read that line from it, that the whole Jodi tor dak shune no na ashe tobe ekla chalo re, which means that when you call for something, if people don't come, you should keep walking alone. So if you think about being different, if you think about taking more risk, cultivating a growth mindset, and obviously learning to get along with people, I think you're on your way. Before you leave, I hope you will think about your teachers and all the faculty sitting in front. Because at your age, the teachers who push you hardest will be the ones you will dislike. But when you get to my age, those will be the ones you will remember most fondly, because there is an element of eat your vegetables in education. And good teachers expect more because they know that you can be more than you are. So to all of you teachers sitting here today, I will not have the privilege of being inspired by you, but I can assure you that your biggest achievement will be the duas and the undying gratitude of all your students when they reach my age. For all your students, it's also my unfortunate duty to remind you that what we teach you in school is different from what you need to learn. Too bad. What we teach you is engineering, maths, chemistry, physics, geography. But what you need to learn is how to be more kind, how to be more just, how to be more curious, how to be more bold, how to be more patient, how to be less impulsive. Unfortunately, we don't know how to teach that. But all of you graduating today have three big things going from you. The first one is obvious. You chose your parents wisely. Anybody going to Manipal won a winning ticket in the ovarian lottery, and that's why you're sitting here. The second thing is you went to a great school like Manipal. An education can be a shield or a sword. A shield is a weapon of defense. It keeps you safe, but it doesn't create great things. Many of the kids who come to me for a job need a shield, their education. They just need a job. They need an insurance policy. But a sword is a weapon of boldness or of creation. An education at Manipal is a sword. Don't forget that. You have a chance to find a cure for cancer, to clean up politics, to write a book, to win an Olympic gold medal, or build a large company. Make sure you use that. And the third thing is, in some of this Mohan and Ambassador covered, you graduate to a very different world and a very different world of work. You graduate to a very different world than I did. You don't have to be Western to be modern anymore. I grew up believing we had to be Western to be modern. I thought it was cool to be Western. I think we can be modern without being Western, which is an important sort of mental liberty we've started getting. And the world of work has changed. When I graduated, you know, employment has shifted from being a lifetime contract to a taxi cab relationship. The average life expectancy of a Fortune 500 company in 1935 was 65 years. The average life expectancy now is 15 years. Companies don't last forever. And so you've got to think about how you're going to build your own portfolio outside institutions which are much less permanent than they used to be. The world of work has changed, whether you call it the Uberization of the workforce, whether you call it the gig economy, whether you call it a portfolio life. The notion that you will join one company, get a defined benefit, index-linked pension, and spend your life there is not going to happen. But that's fine. So because of these three, I will submit things that you have. And to those whom much is given, much is expected. I hope you don't define success as being rich or being thin or being good-looking, you know. You have to define life in broader terms. There are mighty injustices out there in India and the world, you know, illiteracy, disease, malnutrition, poverty, corruption, unemployment. You know, Samuel Huntington is a Harvard historian. He used to say, the gap between India's ideals and its reality is not a lie. It is a disappointment. But it is a disappointment only because your ideals were very high. You know, we aimed to be a democracy when we weren't supposed to be a democracy. So I think, but that gap is our generation's sort of unfinished war. You know, hopefully you will fight those wars, you will put poverty in the museum that it belongs, you will put illiteracy, the extinct species that it should be, and most importantly, you will think about corruption in different ways that we thought. We held our nose very often with corruption, but I don't think we need to do that anymore. But my confidence lies in your dreams, your courage, your imaginations. May a soft heart go with your tough minds and thoughtful choices. Good luck and Godspeed.